Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Interview with a Therapist. Today we have Tia with us. Tia is a counselor in our Louisville office, and she specializes in perinatal counseling. It's such an interesting specialty, and I think it's such a need for that in our community. So I'm so glad to have you on, Tia. Welcome.
Yes, thank you for having me.
Awesome. So I do actually get this question a lot as I'm out like marketing and talking to people. They say, "What is perinatal counseling?" So can
Yeah,
you talk a little bit more about what that is and why it's so important?
absolutely. So perinatal counseling, well, perinatal in general. So that term is used for before or after birth. So like during
Mhm.
pregnancy, after postpartum.
Yeah.
So I think people kind of get confused with that because like perinatal means before. Well, it can mean either before or after.
Mhm.
Um, and so perinatal counseling is a way to provide more support for birthing individuals and their partners that may be struggling with different pregnancy or parenting adjustments. So perinatal counseling can include treating mood and anxiety disorders such as postpartum psychosis, postpartum anxiety, postpartum depression, postpartum OCD, as well as grief and loss, infertility, and even PTSD. So why it's so important is, pregnancy, childbirth, parenting can bring on significant changes, stress, worry, different things like that. Like it can be beautiful and exciting, right? But I think sometimes people don't talk about the other side of it, which can be feelings of sadness, anxiety, fear, guilt, uncertainty, and all those different things. And so it's important to see like a specialist. You can get help from somebody that is like experienced in treating depression, but
Mhm.
I would say it would be good to see a perinatal specialist if you can, just because PMAD, so it's a perinatal mood and anxiety disorder. So I'll probably refer to it as PMAD. But it comes with unique needs and risks. And some of those can be misunderstood if you haven't had like specialized training in them.
Mhm.
And some of those symptoms can like throw red flags up for certain people that aren't trained in them. And so that's why I always say is like, if you can find somebody that is trained, then that would be awesome. But if not, somebody that's not trained in like perinatal can still kind of help you through the process. So
Mhm.
long story, but yes.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think specialists are so important. Like you want
Yeah.
somebody who knows exactly what you're going through. So yeah, I totally agree.
Yeah. Yeah, and like certain like PMADs can throw, like I said, certain red flags, such as like intrusive thoughts. For some people, can be
Mm,
like be
yeah.
seen to certain therapists as like homicidal ideation, and it's really not. But if you had training in it, you would kind of know that it's not that. It's just like an intrusive thought. So that's
Yeah,
important too.
absolutely. And that's an important distinction.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I'm like,
Yeah.
those can like definitely throw red flags and you can react differently. But if you were trained in
Mhm.
it, then you would know like it can be part of a PMAD.
Mhm. Yeah, that can be normal. So
Yeah, absolutely.
we deal with it appropriately.
Exactly. Yeah.
Awesome. I mean, gosh, all of that is just so important. And I think like perinatal mental health is just something that's kind of overlooked. But even though we know about like postpartum depression, postpartum anxiety, like those sorts of things we're kind of aware of, but like the whole process can be
Yeah.
complicated. So I'm
Yeah.
super glad that we have somebody on our team who is just working specifically with that. And I know it's something that you're really passionate about, especially educating our Black and BIPOC communities about the topic and the services that are available.
Yeah.
Can you tell me a little bit more about why you're so passionate?
Yeah. So without going on a long tangent, um,
Get it, girl.
so like hold on. But being a woman of color myself, I feel like it's just important just due to the stigma in the Black community about mental health in general. And so, especially with, like I said, mental health in general, but especially like perinatal mental health, I think it's so important to educate and to let the community know about these services and just different things like that. Because delaying some of these symptoms can prevent them from getting the care or prevent them from getting care, which can turn to bad things that we don't necessarily want to happen. But more specifically, like perinatal. So Black birthing mothers and people are often faced with societal and structural barriers that limit their opportunity to seek interventions and to like address the root of these PMADs. And so in the Black community currently, Black birthing people, they experience a higher rate of PMADs. And so PMADs in general occur in about like 15 to 25% of pregnancies. But in the Black BIPOC community, that doubles, which tells you there's a huge need for that. And then there's this piece, of course, about, like I said, without going on a tangent, there's this piece about healthcare disparities, like with Blacks. Black women are more likely to die from pregnancy-related deaths than whites, which are things that usually can be prevented. And then Black infants are usually at a higher rate of dying as well. And it just shows in research that Black women receive lower quality care than white. So like I said, it kind of plays into like this whole thing. And especially with Black women, specifically perinatal, there's this thing called the strong Black woman schema. And so basically it's something that is ingrained in our culture, right? It's for Black women to exemplify traits of extreme like emotional strength, determination, these caretaking abilities, and all while facing adversity and kind of putting ourselves on the back burner. And so when it comes to Black birthing people or Black mothers, they kind of internalize these struggles, right? And so it has been shown in studies that women or Black birthing people or mothers that have that strong Black woman schema, it's a positive predictor for depression. And so, yeah. And that was a study that was done by Abrams, Hills, and Maxwell. But so overall, my goal is just to educate and continue to advocate and provide services to my community, because some of these things have affected me and some of these things can affect me. So yeah, it's just my goal to continue to do that. And most of this information that I got was from a Black perinatal mental health training that I took. So yeah, it's just something that's really important to me, and I'm going to continue to do that as long as I practice.
Awesome. Wow.
Yeah,
That is, I mean, so important.
yeah,
Gosh,
for sure.
that
Yeah,
is so important. Yeah. Yeah. Motherhood can be really hard. How
yeah,
important is it to have an identity outside of motherhood? And how do you go about starting to develop that?
yes. So like you said, motherhood, it's hard, it's time consuming, it's all of the things, right? So when it comes to finding your identity outside of motherhood, I think a lot of times mothers and birthing people let that slip through the cracks, rightfully so, right? You have a new baby or other kids that you're taking care of. And so we
Yeah.
think that our self-care and things like that can just be put aside. Um, and I think it's also hard to not feel guilty, like you're a bad parent, for not wanting to be with your children for literally
Yeah.
24/7.
That
Um,
mom guilt, right?
yeah, absolutely. It's real. And I get that. And I think society also and tradition doesn't help with that aspect, because they use this like should thing. Like you should want to be around your children 24/7. Like you should be happy doing it all the time. Like, things like that. And I think that pressure is a little bit too much for some people, because then it's like, okay, but what if I don't feel like this, right? Then they
Yeah.
start feeling bad and like they're doing something wrong. And I'm like, it's, I promise you're not doing anything wrong. And this is fairly normal. Because it's definitely okay to get frustrated when you hear your child crying for what seems to be like 24/7, right? Um,
Yeah.
And so I'm like, the more that we talk about these things, the less that people will feel alone in these thoughts, and feel like they are being a bad parent. And I always tell my clients too, I'm like, you can take care of yourself and your child or children simultaneously. Like one doesn't have to suffer. Um, and it's funny because a lot of people will say like, well, I take a shower, and I'm like, well, showering is
That's
it's a
great.
I'm
That's
like,
really good.
yeah, I'm like, I get that, it can feel like self-care when you don't get to do it often. But when we're starting here trying to find our identity, we consider showering as a necessity. Now, if you're taking like 3 showers a day because you love it so much, okay, self-care, absolutely. Um, I always find that so funny. But like part of treatment for like postpartum depression and just depression in general is making that self-care like a priority, right?
Mhm.
Um, but anyways, I really thoroughly enjoy helping mothers and birthing people reestablish the sense of themselves. I feel like a lot of times most people don't come in wanting to do that. I think after like exploring their goals and building rapport, it does soon become one of their clients' goals. But yeah, I really enjoy that because, like I said, most people don't come in wanting to do that, but like after talking, they're like, I actually like I need to find myself outside of being a mom. I'm like, I know it sounds, some people will say that sounds bad because like you're always a mom. I'm like, yeah, you're always a mom, but you are Emily and Tia, right? And it's okay
Mhm.
to do
Yeah,
things outside of mom things. So yeah, that's something that I really enjoy doing.
yeah. And I feel like that all kind of feeds in together, right? It's like that mom guilt
Absolutely.
kind of prevents us from seeking help, seeking care, because we're thinking like, gosh, this makes me a terrible mom. I'm prioritizing myself above my kid. It's like a whole
Absolutely.
thing. Right?
Absolutely. And it just kind of like spirals out. So yeah, that's completely true. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Awesome. This has been like so eye-opening and so helpful. Thank you so much for sharing all this, Thea. Appreciate
Yeah,
that.
of course.
Yeah.
I think it's so
Awesome.
important to, I think, with like perinatal and like postpartum care and things like that, I think it's starting to become a little bit more like relevant, but I think there's still pieces of it that
Mhm.
needs to be um, bigger and more out there and just educate people on these things. I've had people ask me, can I be depressed during pregnancy? And I'm like, yes. So it's just things like that. Cause I'm like, okay, if you
Yeah.
didn't know that, then I'm pretty sure that, you probably were and just thought that it wasn't a thing. So I think it's definitely something that we need to
Yeah.
talk about more. But it's getting out there slowly, slowly but surely.
Yeah. Hopefully a little more after
Yes,
today.
exactly. Yes.
Awesome. Love that. Awesome. Well, for any of you watching at home, if this is something that is speaking to you, if you're thinking, hey, maybe I need to talk with a counselor, get a little bit more support as I go through my pregnancy and parenting journey, we're happy to help. You can reach out to us online at mindsightbehavioral.com, or you can call our office and get a little bit more information about what we do and how we can help. That number is 606 401 2966. Hope to hear from you. Thanks so much.